I'm going to try to summarize the Bible in 7 minutes. Usually I do it in 5 minutes, but I'm giving myself 2 extra minutes because it's nighttime. In order to understand the story of Jerusalem, we have to understand the story of the Bible. Okay, so again, I'm going to try to summarize it. You have to be super concentrated in order to get this. Okay, once upon a time, 4,000 years ago, something like 4,000 years ago, very far away, not in the land of Israel, not in the land of Judea, actually where today Iraq is, in Ur, a place called Ur Kasdim, a man was born, and his name is Abraham. And Abraham grows up in a house with his father. His father actually worships many gods. And Abraham hears the voice of God, and the voice of God says to Abraham, Abraham, lech lecha me'artzecha mimoladetcha me'aretz asher gadalta. Leave your home, leave everything that you know, leave your country, and go to this place that I'm going to show you. Where does he go to? Not Jerusalem, not yet. He goes to a city called Beersheba in the south of Israel. God tests Abraham again, and he says to Abraham, Abraham, take your son, your beloved son, Isaac, remember this part, and go to this very, very specific place, Mount Moriah. Go to this place called Moriah, Mount Moriah, and sacrifice your son to me. What does Abraham do? Abraham takes his son, his beloved son, walks all the way from Beersheba to Jerusalem, to a mountain called Mount Moriah. On top of this mountain, and remember the next word, there is a rock. Rock is a key word for our tour. Puts his son on this rock, he builds an altar, comes to sacrifice him, and in the last second, God sends an angel, and the angel says to Abraham, Avraham, al tishlach etcha el anar. Don't do it. Don't sacrifice your son. This was just a test to see if you are the right guy. The right guy for what? What? Abraham was chosen to lead the way, to show the right way, the belief in one God. And God needed to know Abraham was the right guy that would fulfill and do whatever it takes to do to show the way, even doing the hardest, the biggest sacrifice, and that's sacrificing your son. So this is a very dramatic story in order to understand the part that Abraham has. Where did all of this happen? Where, and this is kind of the first part of why Jerusalem is so important, on a mountain called Mount Moriah that you could actually see behind me, on a very specific rock on Mount Moriah. The rock nowadays is underneath this dome that is behind me, a Muslim monument that we're going to talk about the significance of this place in Islam in the other part of the tour. But underneath this dome, the dome of the rock, that's where Jewish people believe the binding of Isaac, the almost sacrifice of Isaac, happened. I think that was 3 minutes, and I still have 2 more minutes, and I still have a whole book to summarize. So what happens after? Abraham has Isaac. Isaac lives, right? Isaac was not sacrificed. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob has 12 children. These 12 children become the 12 tribes. In one period of time in history, these 12 tribes left the Holy Land, left the land of Israel, the land of Judea, because there was not enough food, not enough water, and went all the way south to Egypt. And they felt kind of comfortable over there in Egypt. They stayed there for a while until they became slaves. They were slaves in Egypt for 400 years until another guy that you're all familiar with comes into the picture, talks to Pharaoh and says, let my people go, okay? Frees the Israelites out of Egypt, and they walk through the desert. They cross the water. As you can see, we're crossing the water together right now, and they come back to the Holy Land. They come back to Judea, to Israel. And when they come here, what do? How do they settle? They actually settle in 12 tribes. They're still not united into one kingdom. When does that change? It changes when one king comes into the picture, King David, and King David says, enough is enough. No more 12 tribes. From now onwards, we're going to be one kingdom. We're going to be one kingdom, and this kingdom is going to be called Judea. The capital, and this is an important part, the capital of this kingdom is going to be Jerusalem. Why does it choose Jerusalem? Why doesn't it choose Beersheba? Because of that very, very specific event that happened, that he remember, that his grand. I can go on forever because it's 1,000 years gap. Grandfather Abraham almost sacrificed his son on Mount Moriah. King David chooses Jerusalem from a religious point of view because of Abraham, but also from a political point of view because Jerusalem is not under any territory of any other tribe. If you're looking in the United States, it's a little bit similar to Washington. It's not under any state. So basically, King David chooses this region to be the capital of the Jewish people. Where does he build his city? Just down over here, okay? After he builds his city, his son, King, anybody remembers his name? I can see you're moving your lips, so let's see if anybody knows who King David's son was. I see you're a little bit shy. Okay, guys, the first one that would unmute themselves and say the name of the son of King David is going to get a hug from Adam.
As soon as you're allowed a hug.
Solomon. King Solomon, exactly. King Solomon is going to be the one that is going to actually build the first temple, the house of God. Where exactly is he going to build it? What is the location that house of God is going to be? He's going to build it on the rock. The rock is a key word in order to understand Jerusalem. So King Solomon built the first temple, the house of God, on the rock, on Mount Moriah. So I know you feel comfortable in our little lookout, but don't feel too comfortable. We're going on our magical vehicle once again because I do want us to see other sites in Jerusalem. Just thumbs up if you could see the map. Great. We're going to leave this lookout and we're actually going to go to the Jewish quarter to begin with. We are now in Jerusalem of 3,000 years ago, okay? We are looking now at Temple Mount at the top, or Sharm el-Sharif. We're going to talk about the Muslim part after. And I do want to take you to one location before we go to the place where the temple stood in the Jewish quarter, and to jump in time, okay, once kind of jump in time to make it even a little bit more confusing. 1967, Jerusalem is united, or yeah, it kind of becomes one big city after the war. And at the time of the war, there were many bombings throughout Jerusalem. Bad things to have bombing, but one good thing happened because of the bombing is that we were able to do archaeological digging in places that we were not able to do archaeological digging before. And what did we find in the middle of the Jewish quarter? This is a Jewish quarter of today. We found, and for me, every time I can't wait to go back there. Every time I see this is a wow moment for me. What do we see? We found a giant wall, a very, very big wall. And what is this wall all about? Why am I saying it's a wow moment? There's so many archaeological sites all around Israel. What's so special about this specific wall? We do know that the temple is not there anymore. We do know from the Bible that one empire in the north, I'm not going to go into many details right now, attacked Israel, attacked Judea in the year 722 BC, okay? And we know as that Jerusalem, that the kingdom of Judea knew about this attack. And the Bible tells us that one of the king decided to build a very thick wall to surround Jerusalem to protect it. And we also know that that king, Hezekiah, that was his name, Hezekiah, was so stressed, so like he wanted to build this wall so fast and so strong that he commanded that this wall should be built on top of houses. As strategically is more important than keeping houses. And what we can see when we do archaeological digging over here is we could actually see the houses that the wall is built on. And again, this is something that is really, really nice when you come and visit Israel, that you could actually open the Bible and read the story and actually see with your eyes what you read in the Bible. So this is something that is very, very nice. Don't forget to miss this location when you come to the Jewish quarter. This is called the Big Wall, the north part of Jerusalem. So what happened to the temple? What happened to Jerusalem? This wall was able to protect, but another empire came. The Assyrians are out. Another empire came into the picture. The name of the empire was called the Babylonians. I always say, if some of the people in this group toured with me, and I always give this info, I don't know how to sing, but I'm going to try soon. So please be, again, gentle with me. And if you know the song, please join in. And what happened to the temple? The first temple was destroyed. The empire in the north, the Babylonians, came and destroyed the temple. When they destroyed the temple, they took the Jewish people that were living here around Jerusalem, and instead of killing them, they took them with them to Babylon. That was their way of preventing a rebellion. When you take someone and you relocate them and you put them in a place that they don't know the language, they don't know the culture, they don't know, they will most probably not rebel against you. But the Jewish people that were sitting now in Babylon were sitting and dreaming about this specific place. This was their center. By the rivers of Babylon, when we sat down, we sat and wept. When we remembered Zion, they thought about this place. This is what they wanted to do. They wanted to come back to this specific place. 70 years after, the Babylonians are out, the Persians are in, and the Persian has a completely different approach. I'm actually going to show you a picture of it. Sorry, here we go. The Babylonians have a completely different approach. The Babylonians say, we found this rock and we actually have Persian letters on it, ancient Persian letters. And what does this say? It says that the Jewish people can return to their land. The Persians are saying this: you want to go back to your little Zion, you want to worship your God, it's completely okay. The only thing that we want from you is that you would pay cash, okay? Pay tax. And that the Jews are returning back to Zion. They come to this specific place and they come. The first thing that they do when they come to Jerusalem, what do? They come to this specific rock and they build on it the second temple. Now, you know, they're supposed to be happy. This is supposed to be an amazing moment, but it's described that the elder people of Zion, the people that came from Babylon to Jerusalem and saw the second temple that was built, of course, I'm talking before this monument was behind me, was here, they looked at the second temple and they thought to themselves, no, they were crying and not tears of happiness. They remembered how the first temple used to look like, and they said, it's nothing close. When will it change? Time will pass. Second temple is standing. Persians are out. Greek are in. Greek are out. Romans are in. And in the Roman period, this second temple will be renovated. It will be renovated by a king called King Herod. Now, what does King Herod do? Typical Roman. The Romans believe that they are stronger than nature. They can build stronger than nature. And King Herod looks at this mountain behind me, Mount Moriah, and he says, not good enough. not good enough. I want to build a proper temple. I need a platform. So what does he do? He builds a platform around the mountain, and after this platform is built, he could build a nicer, prettier, more fancy second temple. He basically renovates it for the Jews. I do have a short video, really, really short, that will help to understand what am I talking about? What is this platform that is built around the mountain? Can you see the screen? Okay, great. So basically, here we go. It's really, really short, just to understand what King Herod did in order to renovate, in order to build this platform, that on top he will build the second temple. So you can see the arches. Basically what we see that he did, he built this platform on top of the mountain. Wherever he needed, he filled it up with arches. We're actually going to visit one of these rooms. The arches nowadays are used as a mosque. So because so many believers come to pray in Actsa Mosque, again, we're going to talk about Islam in a few minutes. They renovated, they basically kind of cleared some of the rooms, the underground, in order to build more places to pray. Okay, here we go. Another thing to look at when we're looking at the drawing of the temple is that there's different areas inside the temple. There's areas where everybody came to visit. There's areas where only Israelites could visit. There's areas where only the priest could visit. And the temple itself, you know, when I work a lot with teenagers, it could get very confusing for them, because when they think about the temple, they think about the synagogue or a place. The temple was something that was completely different. It's the house of God. Nobody goes in the temple. It's where the Holy of Holies is present all the time. Only the high priest will go inside the temple once a year on Yom Kippur. So this is, again, kind of just to understand the structure. But I talked to you a lot about history. I do want us to understand the meaning of the temple. So we said, oops, 1 second, sorry. Here we go. I want to take you to another location on our magical spaceship that is having a little bit of technical problems, but don't worry, we have enough petrol and nobody is going to crash. I want to take you to another location inside the old city. So this is where we were before, closer to the platform that now we understand what it is exactly. And before we go up again, I do want to take you to another location just next to the western wall, the south and western wall. So basically what we see right now is, it's basically the western wall. And if I would continue walking to this direction and turn a left, I would go to the southern wall that you could also see behind me. Okay, south and west. This is exactly the point where we are behind me and in Jerusalem. And I do want us not just to talk about the history and about the Babylonians and the Romans, but also to understand what does it mean to be a pilgrim that is coming to Jerusalem 2,000 years ago when the temple used to stand. Every Jewish person had to come and visit the temple 3 times a year. 3 times a year, 3 holidays. Pesach, Shavuot, and the holiday that we're celebrating right now, Sukkot. These 3 holidays are also connected to agricultural festivals. So basically nowadays, all of the farmers in Israel are collecting their last harvest and kind of covering it. Usually farmers 2,000 years ago would come to the temple and give an offering to God. So while we're kind of looking and standing at this street from 2,000 years ago, just next to where the temple used to stand, I want you to try to imagine that this street is full with people that are very, very excited a few seconds before visiting, before going up to the temple. This is a street from 2,000 years ago. And what do we see here on the left? What is this structure? this is actually shops. And why do you need shops before going to the temple? Basically, you would maybe buy something to sacrifice if you didn't bring something with you. If you had a few coins, you would buy something called, you would exchange it for something called half a shekel. Half a shekel is like, it did not cost a lot of money, but it was kind of the basic thing that you would need to pay in order to go to the temple, an offering. And just behind these shops, we found thousands of mikveh, of ritual bath, of places that people, just before going to visit the temple, they would go down these stairs, get purified, get in their best spiritual moment before they went up to the temple. This is something that we need to understand and remember, and actually it's super exciting to look at this and to talk about it and try to imagine looking just at this image of thousands of people walking here just before going to visit the temple that you could see behind me. We all know that the temple does not exist anymore. In the year 70 AD, there was a very big Jewish rebellion against the Roman Empire. Okay, you can see how big the Roman Empire here in this map that I brought. And what the Romans did when the Jewish rebellion started, they said, we're going to take this group in the side, at the edge of our empire, and we're going to make an example to what happens if anybody rebels the big Roman Empire. And ladies and gentlemen, they come to the land, they systematically, from north to south, go to each and every village, and each and every village has an opportunity to do one of the two, or become Roman, or become part of the Roman Empire, leave their Judaism, or be killed, or be expelled to the rest of the empire. In the year 70 AD, the temple was destroyed, and Jews were spread all around the empire and were not allowed to come back to the land of Judea only in the 19th century. Only in the 19th century. Where can Jews pray? Where can we visit? We could actually visit nowadays. We can go to the top of the mountain, but basically most Jewish people, and I'll get to it in a second, come to the Western Wall to pray. Why can't we kind of go on top of the mountain, talk about the third temple? Well, of course, we all know that there is other religion except Judaism, and there's other beliefs that happened and were created and were established in this region after the Jews were expelled. And in order to understand that, in order to understand the story of the Temple Mount, in order to understand the story of Islam, we actually need to leave the region. We need to leave this place just for a second to get on our magical spiritual vehicle and go to understand Islam. It starts in Mecca. So I just put a picture of the Western Wall for you kind of to see. Of course, this is where Jewish people pray today. It's the Western Wall of the platform. Okay, it's the Western Wall of the platform that was renovated in the time of the Roman period. So we're leaving Israel. This is something that I don't usually do with my tours when they come to Israel, because we don't have the opportunity. It's another benefit that we have on Zoom. And we're actually going to concentrate in the south area, in the Arab Peninsula. Okay, and we're going to move in time. The year is 570. 570. There you go. This is another demonstration to show you. This is what Jewish people believe existed, the temple on top of the platform. Now what we see today is a golden dome, okay, and Actsa Mosque, and I will explain. Now we will talk a little bit more about Islam. Okay, so we left Israel, we're looking at the Arab Peninsula, and we're concentrating on a city called Mecca. Around the year 570, a man was born, and his name was Muhammad. What is the story with Muhammad? I have to change the picture at the background, right? It doesn't work together. What is the story of Muhammad? Muhammad was born in the year 570 in the city of Mecca. He starts his way over there in Mecca. In the Quran, the holy book for Islam, it's described that when Muhammad was 40, Angel Gabriel revealed himself to him. I'm actually going to take you to that location, or where most tradition believe that happened, in Mecca, and revealed himself to him and gave him the Quran. Muhammad starts to spread, starts his way in Mecca, but the people of Mecca do not accept him to be the prophet. They do not believe him. And what Muhammad does, that he leaves Mecca and he goes to another city called Medina. But before we do that, before we go to Medina, I do want us to go into Mecca. By the way, this place in Mecca, only Muslims can visit. And this is one place where Judaism and Muslims thinks differently. Remember when I told you that Jewish people believe that Abraham took his son Isaac to Mount Moriah behind me? In Islam, we have this story, but it's different. Abraham is under a test. He almost sacrificed his son, but it's not going to be Isaac, it's going to be Ishmael. And where does that happen? It does not happen in Jerusalem behind me. It happens here in the region of Mecca. Okay, so same story, different son, different area. Where exactly does it happen? In Mecca, we have a different location, but basically this is a place, this is called the Kaaba in Mecca. Every Muslim person has to go to Mecca once in their life to do something that is called a Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca. And there's a lot of different ceremonies that you need to do when going to Mecca. One of them is surrounding the Kaaba a few times, and other ceremonies that we're going to keep for another time and another tour. So again, the story of Abraham and Ishmael happened in Mecca. The place, the location where Gabriel revealed himself to Muhammad, also happens in Mecca, on this specific mountain that you could see a lot of pilgrimage. Muslim pilgrims are coming to visit, and you can see Mecca in the background. As we said, Muhammad starts his way in Mecca, but the people of Mecca do not accept him. Muhammad moves to another city, to Medina, okay, also in the Arab Peninsula. This is where he starts his way, and in his life, he managed to spread Islam in Medina and also conquered Mecca, okay? So both cities, this is the center, this is where Islam started. Muhammad is also buried in Medina, so we're actually gonna go and visit his grave right now, the Mosque of Muhammad. Here we go. These are places that, of course, we would not be able to visit if not for Corona and Zoom. So this is basically the place, the Mosque of Muhammad. But we're not doing a tour about Arab Peninsula, and I'm not doing a tour about Mecca, and I'm not doing a tour about Medina. We're trying to understand the connection to Jerusalem. So what is a Muslim connecting to Jerusalem? I hope you're still with me. I know this is a lot of information, just a little bit of smiles and hands up so I can see that everybody's still alive. Okay, great. What is the story of Islam and Jerusalem? In the Quran, in the holy book for Muslims, there is one chapter, one surah that describes a night journey, a spiritual night journey to a place called, remember how Jerusalem is called in Islam? El-Quds, El-Actsa. It's described that Muhammad goes on this magical half horse, half woman, it's called El-Burak, magical animal. He goes to this place called El-Quds. I'm gonna share my screen again with you guys. Okay, so it's described beautifully in many Muslim description. El-Burak, that's the name of this magical horse, magical woman, that will take Muhammad to this place called El-Quds, okay? Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And in this specific place, and listen carefully to what I say, Muhammad goes to a very specific rock. okay? He goes to a very specific rock. And from this rock, he ascends up to heaven. And on the way up, he goes all the way up to heaven, he meets a lot of people on the way, a lot of important figures on the way. He will meet Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Jesus, David, lots of different prophets on the way. He will meet them all on the way up until he gets to God. God in Arabic is La, Allah, the God. And God will give him the commandment of praying 5 times a day. God will give him the commandment of praying 5 times a day. Muhammad will then come back to earth, come back to this specific rock, and go back to Medina, go back to Mecca and Medina. So why is Al-Quds, why is Jerusalem important for Islam? This spiritual, magical journey is one of the most important reasons why Jerusalem is holy for Islam. Al-Quds is important for Islam. Some people will say, but it's too far. No, we don't know if it's a spiritual, we don't know if it's a physical, but this is what Muslims believe. This is a place where it happened. The platform was empty for many, many years. A rock was exposed after the Jews were exiled. So what happens? How does it happen? How do we have this structure nowadays? We need to move on after Muhammad. After Muhammad, we have 4 caliphs, 4 people that will continue Muhammad's way, okay? Abu Bakr, we have, Abu Bakr is the first one, is his cousin. We have Umar, that's the second caliph, that's the one that is relevant for us. Umar is also known as a great conqueror. In 638 AD, Umar will conquer a lot of land. Also, he will come over here to Jerusalem, and he will be the first one that will build a monument, a mosque on top of the platform to commemorate the place where Muhammad descended to heaven and came back down with a commandment of praying 5 times a day. I'm gonna add another part. In Islam, when Muhammad started his way, a lot of people in the region were Jews and some Christians. And the first direction of prayer, when Muhammad started Islam, started the way, he said, we need to pray to Jerusalem. After a while, he changed it. Some say because in Muslim tradition, some say it's because the Jewish and Christians did not accept him. And some say maybe it was a reverse, but he changed the place of direction, not to Jerusalem anymore, but to Mecca. So already we have 2 important reasons why Jerusalem is holy for Islam. One, because of the receiving, praying 5 times a day. Second reason is because this is the original area that Muslims pray to. This is also an important reason why it is holy for Islam. I actually want us to go and visit on top of the mountain. If you're planning a trip to Israel, keep in mind, if you're Muslim, you could go and visit all the time. I guide Muslim groups, and they could go in and out the platform whenever they want. Anybody that is not Muslim, not connected to Israeli, or anybody that is not Muslim can go and visit the mountain 3 hours a day in the morning. So make sure, kind of keep it in mind when you're planning your trip. Nowadays, because we have our special magical vehicle, we could actually go and visit this place very, very easily. Yeah, and we can actually visit some sites on top of the mountain that are usually closed for us, for most of us. Okay, so this is the platform that we're talking about. By Jewish perspective, we believe that the binding of Isaac first and second temple happened here. In Muslim eyes, something different happened here under the dome of the rock. That's a place that Muhammad rised up and received the commandment of praying. Over here, we can see another very important mosque on top of the mountain called Actsa Mosque. So basically we have the mosque and the dome of the rock that nowadays is used as a mosque by women mainly, but we will be able to go and visit inside. This is Actsa Mosque from the inside. So basically what we see right now is, you don't know the direction, so you'll have to believe me, but now we are looking to the south. The direction of prayer is to Mecca, okay? So again, this is an opportunity to see Actsa Mosque from inside, what we were not able to do on Zoom. And again, I told you the history, but I do want us to also understand the feeling of a Muslim coming through different rituals. What we see over here is one of the beautiful structure on top of the mountain. It's called Kas. If you understand Hebrew, it will sound a little bit familiar. It comes from the word kos. Kas, Arabic and Hebrew are very, very similar. This is a place that you would wash your hands, wash your feet, wash yourself, purify before praying, before going in to pray. So this is El Kas, but I do want us to go to the dome itself. So the golden dome of the rock, you can see that this structure by Islam, also very similar to Judaism. This place is, you won't see any figures, you won't see any statues. It needs to be pure, it needs to be very, very simple. The only thing that you would see is Arab letters, praise. And underneath, if we would go in, I actually want to show you a short video. What we would see is a rock, the dome of the rock. This is how it looks like from the inside. And short video. So this is inside the building. Actually, they put this green material around the rock, but you could actually go, you can see where this family is going to go now downstairs. It's actually possible to go underneath this rock, underneath the rock, and go into this little cave. By Muslim belief, you could see the footprint of Muhammad. You can see that people are praying over here. And this is why Jerusalem is important for Islam. Okay, I'm gonna give you a minute to watch it because this is quite special. We don't get to do this usually. Okay. I wanted to show you one other location over here. This is another very interesting structure that is built on top of the mountain. I'm just gonna turn around so you could have kind of the whole view. This little monument, it's just next to the Dome of the Rock. We don't know exactly what it was built for. We have a few assumptions why. We do know that the Dome of the Rock, the rock itself is not located at the middle of the platform. And this little structure is. So we think maybe it's to mark the middle of the platform. Some people believe that when King Saul used to judge people, when they used to come for a trial, this is where it took place. Some people say maybe it's like a little model before they built. That's not the reason, because there's 8 angles and not, it's not the same number, it's not the same structure like the Dome of the Rock. And soon we're gonna finish. I actually wanted to finish with this picture that you could see over here. We actually visited this place a few minutes before. This is the streets from the Roman period. And I didn't talk about it before. This is the shops that I was talking about before. I want you to see these rocks that have fallen. We did this archaeological digging in 1967, even after, and this is how we found the street. And I want to finish with this. I told you history. We visited many, many places, and I told you about the history and the empires, but I also want to share a Jewish tradition or a Jewish belief, because what I told you is history until now. But the Jewish belief is that the Second Temple or Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 AD, not because of the Romans. It was destroyed because of false hatred, because we didn't learn to accept each other. and maybe not only each other, but also others. If we will not learn to love each other and to accept each other, our future, you know, we can learn from our history, our future is going to be destruction. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I can see Imam has joined us, so I want to leave room for just a few questions, and to say thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed the tour. If anybody has any question, I would love to hear, and I have to do 10 seconds of commercial. Sorry. If you enjoyed the tour, please leave a review on TripAdvisor. It really keeps me going in these difficult times. It's Maya Israel Tour. It's easy to remember. And that's it. If anybody has a question, you can unmute yourself. I know I talked a lot. Please.
I wonder, Maya, if I can use my Imam privilege and ask the first question. Thank you so much. I only was able to get the last 20 minutes of it. It's beautifully done. As you know, in the halakha, there are a lot of reservations in going to the holies of the holy place. And in some interpretations, you are banned, you are forbidden to go to Temple Mount because you don't know where that holies of the holy place is. Is it then religiously permissible to go online? Like if you can't go person, is there any halakhic tension or struggle there that you can you or can you not go through internet, through webcams?
Great question, and what is the deal? Can Jewish people go and visit, not go and visit? So there's lots of different answers to that. Some streams in Judaism, some groups in Judaism say we don't know exactly where the temple stood. And remember, I said that only the high priest could go into the temple once a year. We don't know exactly where it was, so maybe it's better that one group says not to go up at all. Let's not go up, because we don't have a temple, we cannot go, we cannot visit, we do not know. Also, we are not purified enough. There's lots of different rituals we need to do in order to visit this place. We need to do a mikveh. We need to have a ceremony with something that is called the red cow, the para aduma. So some group says we're not going on. My father, for example, is ultra-Orthodox. He says to me, Maya, don't go visit Temple Mount. I am not observant, and I do go visit Temple Mount. Some other Jewish groups are saying something different. They say, no, we can go visit. We will go around, so we will go up, but we will not go to the platform itself where the Golden Dome is standing right now. So we will go up, but we will just go on the edges, and we will go there, and some of them even are doing something that they're not allowed to do, they're not supposed to do. All of the platform itself is now in the hands of a waqf, an organization that is in charge of holy Muslim sites. So basically, they are the ones that are taking care of this place, are running this place. Only Muslims are allowed to pray there. And those group of Jewish people are going on the mountain, and they would go around, you know, like maybe more observant. They won't go to the platform itself, but they will try to maybe pray inside, and that's something that they're not supposed to do. And some Jews are maybe more secular or less observant, will go to visit and will go to see this place from out of interest. So there's lots of different answers of should you go or shouldn't you go. Some people say whatever happened, don't go up. The main rabbi of Israel is the main Orthodox rabbi says don't go up. Other movements that we hear more and more in the last few years are saying this is a place for everybody to pray. We are going to go and visit, and it causes a lot of problems. But yeah, that's already politics, I guess. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. We have time. I hope the audience will get a chance to ask you a few questions before we start.
Let's see. Anybody? You know, I always say if there's no question, it means I did a very bad job because I gave you so much information and it's so confusing. But okay, yeah, I think you need to unmute yourself if you have a question. And if not, here we go. Yeah.
Hi. My husband is arguing with me that Akedat Yitzchak, the sacrifice, was not in Jerusalem. Was it actually, that's what you're saying, it was on the rock?
So okay, so good question. Where did the binding of Isaac happen? There's a few traditions. The main tradition in Judaism, the main tradition in Judaism happened on Mount Moriah, where most people believe that's on top of the Temple Mount, underneath where today the dome is. So yes, most Jewish tradition believe that's the place of the sacrifice, where the sacrifice happened. There's other religions.
Mount Moriah is in Jerusalem?
Mount Moriah is in Jerusalem by most tradition of Jewish people, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Is that where all the religious people go to cut the hair of their 3-year-old boys?
That's Mount Meron, and it's connected to another rabbi in the north of Israel, Mount Meron in the north, where Rabbi Rashbi is buried. Yeah.
Rabbi who?
Rashbi.
Shimon Bar Yochai.
Okay.
And how dare your husband can argue with you? Like, how is this courage? Where is it coming from?
He says to me, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Okay.
She went to university to learn all this history.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's wonderful. Maybe your husband is a secret Muslim. Because Muslims believe the binding was not with Ishaq and it wasn't in Jerusalem.
Exactly.
Binding was with Ishmael and it happened in Mecca.
Yeah, we also went to Mecca. I don't know if you visited, you were with us.
Muslim next time. So you could have 72 virgins.
Okay, guys, unless there's other questions, I'm gonna thank you. Gail, you can send your husband to me. I'll be more than happy to chit chat with him after. And yeah, it's 3, so I'm gonna go to sleep. I hope you enjoy. I wish I could stay. I have to wake up early in the morning, but thank you. And
thank you so much, Maya.
Yashar Koah, Maya. Looking forward to meeting you in the Jerusalem. Next year in Jerusalem.
That's right. Blessings to you and to your family, and thank you for a wonderful, wonderful tour. So now that Maya has taken us all the way through into Jerusalem and to the pilgrimage routes, it's my honor and privilege to continue the conversation, this next stage in the Hajj during the Chag of Sukkot, for our very, very special guest that I'm going to introduce now, who is joining us all the way from Duke University. And Imam Antepli completed his training actually in Turkey. He worked from 96 to 2003 on a variety of humanitarian and relief projects in Burma and Malaysia, and is the founder of the executive board of the Association of College of Muslim Chaplains, as well as a member of the Association for College and University Religious Affairs. From 2003 to 5, he served as the first Muslim chaplain at Wesleyan. Then he moved to the Hartford Seminary in Connecticut, where he was associate director of the Islamic Chaplaincy Program and Interfaith Relations. And he previously served as Duke University's first Muslim chaplain from 08 to 14, and then as Duke's chief rep of Muslim affairs, engaging students, faculty, and staff across and beyond the campus. And he, in 2019, joined the Sanford School of Public Policy as an associate professor of the practice and a secondary appointment at the Div School for Interfaith Relations. His story is absolutely fascinating. He's a wonderful human being and a true teacher and seeker. And I've actually had the pleasure of being able to get to know him courtesy of the work that I've been doing as a rabbinic Leadership Institute fellow at the Hartman Institute. And tonight, part of what we would like to do, given that we are now in this pilgrimage state of the journey during the festival of Sukkot, we wanted to take a pilgrimage to the sacred center of Jerusalem and to really engage in an interfaith dialogue about a couple questions that we're going to be thinking about. Why is Jerusalem, why does it remain the sacred center of the universe for Judaism and Islam? Maya started to give us the groundwork that I hope now you'll become more familiar with. And we're also going to think about why Jerusalem still inspires a pilgrimage during this season of the pilgrimage festivals, known as, in Arabic, it's called the Hajj. In Hebrew, it's called Hechag. That is, this is the holiday of the pilgrimage. And we'd also like to think together not only about what unites us, but places where the stories diverge, and to think together about how we can reimagine the Sukkot Shalom, which is one of the names that's given to the temple that has yet to be built on that space that we were learning about tonight, that is home to both of these remarkable religions of Judaism and Islam. So I want to first of all welcome Imam Antepli, and I would also ask for everyone to come to this journey with an open mind and an open heart. If you have questions while he's talking or while I'm talking, please feel free to put those questions into the chat box. And then afterwards, we're going to leave plenty of time for question and answer so that you'll be able to engage Imam Antepli. But I want to really, first of all, wish a hearty salam alaikum to you and to welcome you. I know that we couldn't do this in person, thanks to Marcel Alifant, who is someone who's very dedicated to furthering these relations in our community. We're hoping, God willing, soon that the journey that you were supposed to take right before we ended up having to lock down because of COVID for the Pilgrimage Festival of Passover, God willing, we'll say B'Shana Haba'a, we will be able to do this together, either this Passover or maybe next Passover. Some way, somehow, we will find a way to be able to reconnect together. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time this evening to be with us, Imam.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It is a distinct pleasure and honor to join my dear friend, whom we met in Jerusalem in person at the Machon Hartman, and then take that friendship into now to a Zoom space where we will talk about Jerusalem, a city that really where my heart is. This is the only summer or year in the last 14 years I didn't spend significant chunk of my time in Jerusalem. So I have a Jerusalem withdrawal syndrome that I hope this Zoom call will be a minor therapy. I hope every single one of you are blessed, staying safe during these incredibly puzzling times, but also had a beautiful Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, a blessed and rewarding holy and sacred times. I love Yom Kippur, and this is maybe the 20 years, first time I didn't go to shul, because I love people watching and asking forgiveness. I love that practice, spiritual practice. Nobody goes and beats the other person's chest. You did this, you did that. Like that introspection, that self-critical posture is incredibly beautiful. So Actsa Mosque, and looking forward to having this rich conversation about Jerusalem, but also beyond. I know we have few issues between our communities globally as well as in North America. There are so many difficult forces further dividing us, polarizing us, and we have competing narratives and truth claims and legitimacy claims to that part of the world. But despite all of this, I think it only makes it more meaningful that we can engage without necessarily avoiding those factors that's dividing us and polarizing us, and try to make sense of it, especially as North American Jews and Muslims who are in somewhat similar size, going through similar struggles in this part of the world, and looking forward to not only just soul problems, but coming together and singing God's glory together.
Wonderful. So thank you, Imam. Maybe you can take us through some of what we were talking about earlier and reflecting on with Maya, and maybe from a personal perspective, you can share with us why it is for you as a Muslim that Jerusalem really is very much the sacred center of your universal pilgrimage, especially in light of the sources in Islam, specifically the surah that speaks about that journey that Maya took us on. How does your understanding of that pilgrimage inform your own spiritual journey and the way that you look at this space of Jerusalem, and then in turn the way that you look at Judaism's relationship to it?
I think Maya did a really wonderful job to outline and take us to this visual pilgrimage to an important and central aspect of why Jerusalem is holy and sacred for Islam and Muslims. But often, if you start with Temple Mount and Aqsa and Haram al-Sharif and end there, there is not a complete and quite honestly entirely accurate representation of Islam's connection to Jerusalem or that part of the world. The story should be starting from the Genesis, from the creation story. First of all, Jerusalem and everything in it and everything happened there is holy and sacred because the foundational claim of Islam is not to be a new religion. Muhammad was not a distinct prophet. When he received revelations and started spreading his message to his community, he never thought he was creating a new club and asking for people for membership. Muslims, both theologically and religiously, claim to be the youngest sibling of the Abrahamic family. And I know in the West, Islam's claim to Judaism and Christianity, Islam's claim to Abraham, Islam's claim to both Ishmael and Isaac is not reciprocal. I understand that. I think the Western Judaism and Christianity has gone through a different historical experience, but it is incredibly important to see Jerusalem through the eyes of Muslims. Not that hill and mountaintop and a few mosques and buildings there. It goes much deeper, much deeper, that Jerusalem and everything that happened there and representation, especially with Abraham. Because Muslims believe the covenant that Abraham has agreed or got into with God, that lach, when God said, get up and leave your land and go to those promised land, that promise, that covenant, that blessings through descendants, according to Muslim tradition, includes Abraham's children both through Isaac as well as Ishmael. You know, that's why it makes the whole Abrahamic story a part of Islam's story. Islam claims ownership. I will never forget my daughter, who is now 19. When she was 7, we were just traveling in the mountains of North Carolina, and we stopped in front of a Catholic church. And my 7-year-old Muslim daughter saw Virgin Mary with the beautiful head covering, and immediately she showed the statue of Virgin Mary and said, Daddy, look, Muslims live here. Muslims, this building belongs to Muslims because this woman's statue looks like her mother who wears the head covering. So it's like one of those pride Abba moment that I taught my girl my religion well. She sees a Jewish woman who became a symbol of Christianity in the Catholic Church and says, this woman looks like part of who I am, or whatever she represents is part of who I am. But very few people in that Catholic Church would look into her mother and say, there's a connection. This Muslim woman and this Jewish woman who became a founder, Jesus's mother, is somewhat related. Very few people make that connection, but it's important theologically and historically. And I can say more. If you look, what makes somebody Muslim? What is Muslim Shema? What is the testimony of the faith that Muslims say? If you look, believe in one God, the previous revelations, previous prophets, it is very clear that in its origins, in its imagination, Islam never claimed to be a new distinct religion. Islam always claimed to be a continuation of God's message. And therefore, through Abraham, through Noah before him, and Isaac, Ishmael, Moses, Aaron, David, Job, Jonah, all the prophets in the Hebrew Bible is also revered and mentioned in the Quran and respected there as well. So the first thing we need to understand why Jerusalem is holy and sacred, because if Jerusalem is not just the name of a city, but the name of a story, name of a people, name of a covenant, that covenant, according to Muslim tradition, it includes us. It's so interesting. I learned at my studies at Hartman that Ishmael was a very common Jewish name until Islam spread in the Middle East. Ishmael was just a regular Chaim, regular Yosef, regular Jewish Hebrew name. But when Islam sort of gradually became a distinct religion to itself in the Middle East, Jews basically put some healthy barriers, saying maybe Ishmael doesn't belong to us, since they believe the covenant has continued through Isaac. But again, to reiterate my point, Isaac never stopped being a Muslim name. Jacob, Joseph never stopped being a Muslim name. This is an important distinction, which I hope we can go a little bit deeper. For example, because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, inevitable that most of the Jewish sounding images or names are not very encouraged in many parts of the Palestinian societies and communities. But it's so interesting. I just found out 2015 numbers. Isaac is the second most common name after Muhammad among men or boys born in the Palestinian societies or Arab societies. So it's so interesting. Through political tension, there is inevitable divorce and distancing from anything that sounds Jewish or Jewishy. But still, Isaac is the second most common name, not even Ishmael, not even Abraham. So something so uniquely Jewish for Jewish brothers and sisters, it is also uniquely Muslim and Islamic. This is one thing. Second, if you think of Islam or Islamic theology as a big pillar, everything is built on it, that pillar has 3 legs. I hope you can visualize. If something is standing on 3 foundations, it can never survive, or it can never continue to be in existence if you remove one of the legs. It will collapse. Islam is built on 3 cities and what they represent. Jerusalem, equally, Mecca and Medina, where Abraham, Ishmael, and Hagar built the first monotheistic temple before Jerusalem. The story in the Hebrew Bible, what happens to Hagar and Ishmael after they are kicked out of the house of Sarah, it's not much known. Pretty much story becomes insignificant after that, even though towards the end, Ishmael comes back and then in Machpelah, they bury their father together. But again, it still remains a peripheral, marginal story. It never moved to the center of Jewish theology or Jewish imagination. Whereas for Muslims, that the Hagar and Ishmael story is the beginning of our story, because Muhammad is a direct descendant of Ishmael. Muhammad came through the direct lineage of Ishmael. And according to Muslim tradition, Hagar and Ishmael didn't leave because there were problems between 2 women, 2 mothers, between Sarah and Hagar. It was because God, again, was testing Abraham's faith. God was testing Abraham's submission and surrender and obedience. And it was God's test to take Hagar and Ishmael, his firstborn son, in the middle of the desert in today's Mecca and leave them there. Because in the Quranic story, it's really beautiful. When Abraham leaves Hagar and Ishmael, this infant boy, and turns his back to them and starts going back to Jerusalem, Hagar asks him one question only. Really? Why? Is this God's test? And Abraham says yes. And says, okay, then I'm content. Hagar says that God will never leave us in vain, that God will intervene and we will survive. It's a very typical Muslim surrender story. And miraculously, they find this miraculous water of Zamzam, and they built a whole civilization in that part of the world. But again, that connection to Mecca, what makes Mecca important is that connection to Jerusalem. God created these 2 centers of spiritual headquarters to flourish. And Abraham came back and forth from the house of Sarah and visited Hagar and Ishmael. And in one of those visits, the sacrifice of Ishmael took place. And in one of those visits that God ordered Abraham, our father Avram, to build that cubical black building where Muslims are circling around all the time. And if you look at the Muslim Hajj pilgrimage, every ritual, every step, that 9 days of following the footsteps of Abraham is full of Jerusalem stories, full of Abraham's connection to back to the Holy Land, that promise, which Muslims are feel they are part of the same covenant. And almost every Jewish story is Islamized and incorporated to Muslim theology. So it's just not what mountain and a few stones and buildings. It is really the essential formational story. And Muhammad, in his prophetic career, built another spiritual headquarters in Medina. But again, this is not monotheism 1.0 in Jerusalem, 2.0 in Mecca, and 3.0 in Medina. No, it was in partnership with these three epicenter. Therefore, it is really interesting. What is the wisdom of God creating such an expansive universe, such a big universe? You know, when I went to New Zealand, has anybody ever been to New Zealand? Anyone? I really hope you will visit. When I went to New Zealand, in the Abrahamic sense, in the Jewish Abraham sense, I questioned God. Like, why did you choose Holy Land in the Middle East? Look at this beautiful country. You could have chosen New Zealand or British Columbia, Vancouver. Like, there are so many other much bigger, much beautiful places there. I guess we will get the real answer when we go to the heavens. So the second thing is the Islam's formation and growth took place. But also the third one is what Maya took us through. When Muhammad started receiving revelation as a grandson of Ishmael, when he reclaimed Abrahamic monotheism, when he challenged his community's idol worshiping practices, but he was talking about, again, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Joseph, Moses. In the Quran, Moses mentioned 147 times. Aaron is mentioned about 20 plus times. Muhammad is by name mentioned only once. Even the entire Quran is revealed to this. If you look, these 23 years of prophetic career, the entire ethical moral teachings, scriptural teachings is built and based on a continuation of the story. Nothing starts at 610. Everything starts in Genesis, Adam and Eve, and Noah and Abraham. I cannot emphasize this enough, and I can give several different examples why Quran, which is much shorter than Hebrew Bible, gave that much coverage to what happened in Jerusalem or towards Jerusalem. Why Moses, Abraham, Joseph, Isaac, Aaron, and tribes, and Benjamin and their stories, David, Solomon, is so essential to Quran, so teaching-wise. But the third thing, in addition to what Maya already explained, in the 9th year of his prophetic career, his polytheist idol-worshipping community refused to believe Muhammad. It's been 9 years, he's spreading his message, but he's an utter failure, that nobody believes in him, and everybody who believes in him are just slaves and poor people. Nobody's buying his message. There's a marketing problem. And then Muhammad, in the 9th year, one of the lowest moments of his life, when his wife died, when his uncle died, when there was a boycott against his community, he was experiencing the lowest moment of his life and his prophetic ministry. God took Muhammad from Mecca to Jerusalem. This is also incredibly important. So God was finally going to intervene. This is Islam's splitting the sea story. This is Islam, Muhammad walking on the water story, that God is intervening the history on behalf of the believers. This is Islam's David beating the Goliath story, but it's happening in Jerusalem. It's so interesting that God brings Muhammad in a spiritual journey, whether you believe it literally or figuratively. I believe it figuratively. In one night, he, through some angels, comes to Jerusalem in a spiritual realm, miraculous way, in a spiritual existence. He meets previous prophets and messengers, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, who is a prophet for Islam as well. And from there, from that golden dome on top of that rock, he is taken all the way to heavens, where he has the Sinai moment. So in so many ways, Jerusalem is the Muslim Sinai. Jerusalem is where Muhammad downloaded information from clouds to his tablets. So I know Apple products, and Steve Jobs were not the first one downloading things from cloud to their tablets. It was Moses, and before him, many other prophets. But if you can sort of really compare what is Sinai for Jews and Judaism, and how much of everything is sort of I love that dating app. I saw you at Sinai. Like every Jew believed that somehow our story began there. We were there even before the creation. We saw each other, and then somehow he came back to this world. So Jerusalem represents, and that story of the night journey represent the Muslim Sinai experience, where Islam formed itself as a religion. Islam interacted with God. Islam got into direct conversation with the divine, and Muhammad received basic commandments, basic pillars of Islam, basic creeds of Islam, and he brought this back to his community. So in so many ways, whatever happened before and after Sinai, if you can divide Sinai journey in Judaism, in a way, after Sinai, before Sinai, Jews were people. They were Hebrews. They were children of Israel. But after Sinai, it became a religion. It became a halakhic thinking. So most of that legal, ethical, moral teachings took place in Jerusalem. And that's why in Muslim imagination, that mountain and that journey from that mountain, it's almost like an access point. It's an elevator, spiritual elevator, that you can only go through to God through that direction. And as Maya said, in the first 9 years of that Islamic tradition, Muslims used to worship towards Jerusalem. But after that journey, Mecca became the center and the direction of prayer for Muslim communities as Islam grew as a distinct religion later on. Let me pause here. I've been talking about 20 minutes. I have several other things to say, but between being 820 and my thick Turkish accent, I don't want people to forget their questions. Let me pause here for a few minutes to give you and Rabbi Glazer an opportunity to ask a few questions, because I want to say a few more things. I brought you theologically and historically up until the 7th century, but there is more to be said after 7th century. But let me pause here.
Thank you, Imam. So if people either want to put up their hands or use the app that shows your hand going up, you're welcome to ask a question at this point, or you can also save your questions for later on and put them into the chat. There's a lot of things that I'm sure are percolating, and it was helpful to be able to see the images that Maya showed us on the journey, but also, Imam, the way that you're now describing this is an interesting relationship between Medina, Mecca, and Jerusalem as these pivoting epicenters, which I think sometimes we don't always appreciate. And I guess one of the questions that I'm thinking of while I make space as well for others, if you have questions to share, is maybe we can also hear from you. Why is it that if we have so much of a shared journey, and you know, you mentioned that the story of Hagar and Ishmael becomes peripheral in the Jewish tradition, even though we do read that story on Rosh Hashanah, which I think is very interesting. We read it from the Bible, but we don't tell the rest of the story the way that you were describing it. Why is it that if we have so much of a shared tradition and so much of a shared pilgrimage route to Jerusalem, that nowadays we find ourselves in the midst of so much hatred, so much violence, so much enmity that seems to be leading us towards almost a kind of an apocalyptic, what Bernard Lewis called this clash of civilizations. It seems like we share so much, and yet we are also so very far apart. Why is it that we find ourselves in this place? And then maybe you might also share with us some of your reflections and experiences on teaching Muslim clergy, which I think is the most fascinating work that you're involved in with MLI at Hartman.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you're asking my dear friend the $1 million question. Bernard Lewis also said, what went wrong? A story that's somewhat reconciled in the Bible itself. If Ishmael came back from Mecca to bury Abraham in Machpelah, And that's to me a symbol of reconciliation. Whatever internal, intra-family problems were there, they figured it out. And here we are, last 4,000, 5,000 years, I don't know, still bickering about it. There are I can say a lot about the political situation, but I think ultimately this is an intra-family feud, intra-family conflict. It is a Esau and Jacob, Ishmael and Isaac. Somehow we are not, as children of these ancient sages, are not living up to the ideals, ethical, moral teachings. And there were times, as I was going to continue, where Jews and Muslims really behaved. After Muslims took Jerusalem from the Christians, Byzantines and the Romans, it was the first time Jews were allowed to come back to Jerusalem. It was the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem that enabled Jewish presence in El Khalil, in Hebron, and in Jerusalem. Because Romans, after they destroyed the temple in 70 AD, a common era, CE, they didn't allow Jewish communities to exist even in the Judea and Samaria or anywhere significant in the Jerusalem area. They were mostly pushed to an exile. The closest place were, as you know, in the northern Galilee, where Rabbinic Judaism took its roots. It was the Muslims, after taking over Jerusalem and conquering it, they brought Jews back. There's an, you can sort of dismiss this because Islam had the superiority claim, as Bernard Lewis say. It was a hierarchical system. It wasn't 21st century egalitarian, equal society. But if you look and discuss this through the values and historical conditions and the cultural practices of that time, this is an incredibly gracious story for both Jews to accept Muslim majority rule in that way and survive and exist in El Khalil and throughout. Let me give you one example. Again, Jewish experience in the Muslim majority world, in Jerusalem and elsewhere. It wasn't rosy. It wasn't always wonderful. It wasn't, in the modern sense, like equal, as we should aspire today. But if you compare the Jewish experience in Europe and the Jewish experience in the Muslim world, it is not even comparable. There is nothing, absolutely nothing close to regular pogroms or Good Friday killings, or God forbid, anything similar to a Holocaust. But the question is, I don't think Muslims were inherently more peaceful than European Christians. I don't think so. I think what tamed the Muslim violence or Muslim obliteration, because they could have. They had every political power and hegemony to just wipe out all the Jewish communities. They didn't because of these stories. So as you rightly pointed out, Rabbi Glazer, it looks so depressing to look at the Jewish-Muslim relations today, as if it's going to bring the world to an end. But it wasn't always like this. It wasn't. And I think what went wrong is a $1 million question. And with your permission, I want to save these contemporary challenges towards the end. Let's stay in the sanctity of Yerushalayim and Jerusalem to see if some of the historical and theological, scriptural connections that I provided will spark any questions from the audience. And I want to talk about MLI.
Wonderful. So at this juncture, any questions or comments that folks want to make before the Imam continues?
Gail, is your husband listening? What is he saying? Oh, there he is. Good looking guy. Okay. I will sort of lead my conversation. This is an interesting crowd. For the first time, Muslims are talking more than Jews. So it's sort of undoing the whole stereotype. I was hoping more back and forth, agreement, disagreement, delight, anger. That's the goodness of chavruta. That's what I love. When I was in the Machon Hartman, I love that back and forth, both with the text and also with your chavruta, whoever you are studying with. I hope we will be in each other's chavruta. So let me sort of go another 7-8 minutes. What happened after Muslims took over Jerusalem, which was a fulfillment, a homecoming project. In a way, the way many of my Jewish brothers and sisters, they see the return of Jews to Israel and the creation of the state of Israel as a fulfillment of their religious longing and dream and fulfillment of their homecoming project. In so many ways, if you study and look how late 8th century, 750 plus, Muslims took over Jerusalem, and they relied primarily, because Christian Romans, they destroyed all the Jewish, not only the temple, but pretty much everything. And Muslims, when they came from Mecca, they had no knowledge or prior experience to build Jerusalem according to its Abrahamic roots. They didn't know where Machpelah was. They didn't know where the Dome of the Rock was. They didn't know where the Citadel of David was, because it was all destroyed. They relied on the rabbinic Judaism that they brought from Galilee, from Akko, from those areas where remaining Jewish communities, because they had the knowledge, they left Jerusalem, but they took Jerusalem with them in their memories. Jewish community exercising theological memory helped Muslim emperors of many years, many centuries. It was the Jewish scholar who said this was the Dome of the Rock, this was the holiest of the holy place, this was the place where Muhammad's angel landed, this was the holy place here, this was the holy place there. And then especially Maqam Ibrahim in Hebron, it was again the Jewish communities or Jewish scholarships help Muslims were able to build these monumental stuff. But something really interesting happened when Muslims took over Jerusalem. Can anyone remember what happened? What kind of global event this Muslims taking over the Holy Land triggered globally by 9th century onwards? Yeah, Crusaders, Crusades, the conquest of Jerusalem by the Muslims and inviting back the Jews, it really challenged the fundamental and theological foundation of Christian Europe. And it triggered waves of crusaders by the popes of that time who coined the term Holy War. They just constantly, so Jerusalem, moving forward the next couple of centuries, in addition to being the key central theological prism where Islam built its theology, it became almost like a treasure that these outsiders and enemies of Islam is trying to steal us from. Have you seen the Ice Age? The famous animation where that squirrel constantly scared that somebody will steal this corn, pine corn from him. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Almost Jerusalem became this jewel, this diamond of Islam that the European political powers over and over for about 10 centuries. In the Muslim imagination, crusaders are like Haman. Crusaders are like in the Jewish imagination. If you really compare that every century there will be somebody to wipe out and obliterate the Jewish people. In every century there was some sort of an existential threat to Jews and Jewish people, which unfortunately always has been true up until now. I hope we are over from that cycle of death and destruction. But the Western assault and its devastation, its ability to take Jerusalem back and forth, Jerusalem, in addition to being the theological center, it became the political board between Muslim civilizations and the Judeo-Christian West. It is incredibly important to understand the despairing and the incredibly messed up condition that we are in today. Why Muslims' reaction and Muslim insistence and stubbornness in recognizing the legitimacy of the state of Israel, because for many of you, rightfully so, as I grow to learn and I grow to be even appreciating, for you are coming back your ancestral land. but the way Muslims in their perception, again, I'm not discussing whether it's right or wrong, but the way Muslims experience the creation of the state of Israel is nothing but the latest wave of Judeo-Christian Western colonial crusades and land grabbing and humiliation of Islam and Muslims, because it started in the 9th century, it never ended. Christian Europe was always in conflict with Muslim empires, Seljuks and the Mamluks, and then the Ottomans later on. But immediately after the 16th century, then European colonial powers, hand in hand with the Protestant church and the Catholic church, they kept coming and occupying Muslim lands and sucking the blood out of their natural resources and looting their countries for centuries, So in 1917, through the Balfour Declaration, and in 1948, with the creation and independence of the State of Israel, that unhealed wound of Islam, that unhealed wound, once again, they are coming and taking over or attempting to take over. It became a symbolic identity war. Really, Bernard Lewis in that sense is right, predicting or imagining the clash of civilization, where Jerusalem no longer is the center of theology that unites Jews and Muslims, that unites us in our common ancestor Abraham, but it becomes like a really chessboard of the civilizational fight. That's the place where this bloody war is planned and take place and act. And everything so disgusting that you see, I'm skipping few centuries to make sure we will have a conversation, is a result of Muslim imagination or Muslim experience, Muslim perception of the state of creation, the state of Israel. And in the continuing decades since 1948, Muslim exclusive study, learning of what's going on in that part of the world, exclusively to their detriment through the prism of Palestinian suffering, which only again confirms that these are colonial projects. These are people who are coming from outside to take over what is ours and humiliate us. Not these people are indigenous here. They kept their indigeneity, if that's a correct word, through vicariously, through Judaism, through theology, through biblical longing and learning way before Holocaust. Those stories are most unknown to my people. And therefore, unfortunately for many Muslims, especially for those who are extremists, taking this into violent and terroristic, and there are so many of them, evil organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad, they are able to weaponize these Muslim wounds and turn into a theology of hate and death and destruction. And thankfully, not in that scale, but there are similarly deeply troubling, deeply disturbing and disorienting Jewish voices in that sense as well. There are also Jewish voices who replace Islam, Muslims, Arabs as the contemporary or lost Haman, lost existential threat. It used to be Soviet Russia, it used to be Nazi Germany, now it's Islam and Muslims and Arabs, and therefore our reaction should be hostile, our reaction should be much more confrontational, and our engagement should be about us versus them, or our survival is depending on eliminating the other side. Thankfully, those hate theology or hate centers of thinking is still in the margins in the Jewish communities. But for all sorts of reasons in the Muslim community, unfortunately, it's much more loud, it's much more visible, and it is much more disgusting.
So Imam, can you maybe share with us, give us a window into some of the things that you're discovering now as you are working through this program called MLI at Hartman? Tell us about the program and tell us what you're seeing in terms of this next generation of Muslim leadership that I think is so incredibly inspiring, and that I have so much respect for you and for Yossi Klein Halevi, who are doing this program at Hartman. Tell us about some of the discoveries that you've made and some of the hopes and visions of the Jerusalem that we are dreaming of, that it seems to already beginning to percolate within this this next cohort of Muslim leaders that you're working with in terms of their relationship to Zion.
Thank you very much. Does the participant know Shalom Hartman, at least vaguely? Like what kind of institution that is?
Some people do, some don't. So you can give them maybe a 1 minute elevator summary of the Hartman Institute. Obviously, people know that it was created by um, the by
But
David Hartman of blessed memory, who was from Montreal, where that's where he
hello,
was.
Quebecian.
That's right.
You should be incredibly proud that a religious startup, which started in your city, became this giant yeshiva, modern yeshiva. Maybe you can do that introduction better than I do, as far as the Jewish landscape and what Shalom Hartman represents. Go ahead.
Well, on one foot, Shalom Hartman actually is the name of David Hartman's father. He wanted to be able to create a space that originally was supposed to allow Jewish leaders to be able to recharge, to retreat. Originally, the original retreats actually were in the Laurentians, just north of here. But eventually, he wanted to find a home in Jerusalem where that work could be done in order to be able to allow clergy to grow. But very early on, David Hartman had the vision as well that that work was part of a theological dialogue that included interfaith dialogue, both with Christian clergy and with Muslim clergy. And the MLI work that Imam Antepli and Yehezkel Halevi are responsible for is really just, I think, one of the many outgrowths of the wonderful seeds that were planted that were part of David's vision to be able to create a machon, this institute where big ideas were discussed, and where not only was it a space for interfaith dialogue, but also intra-faith dialogue. So it means when I go to Jerusalem and I go and study with the cohort of the Rabbinic Leadership Institute, I'm actually studying with all the denominations of Judaism, which normally doesn't happen. We have our own intra-faith issues where Jews are no longer talking to Jews based on their denominations. And so Hartman was all about opening these spaces up so that we could enter into dialogue within our own family, and then within our larger family that includes the Abrahamic religions. That's kind of the on one foot.
That's a beautiful description. And I hope you will get a chance to experience yourself. It's one of the very few, if not the only place, where you walk through the gates and it has a beautiful quad in the middle, where you see a Haredi Jew, a liberal North American Jew, anything and everything in between, a group of IDF soldiers and Muslims, all around the same campus, seemingly just being a chavruta to each other, studying. Let me take a few steps back and be a little bit more biographical. As I often introduce myself, I am a recovering anti-Semite. I grew up in Turkey and not religious. It's very important, but very secular and very nationalistic, chauvinistically racist, national Turkish education, both in my house as well as in the school, was so embedded in that part of the world at that time in early 1980s, was very anti-Semitic. The first book I read about Jews and Judaism were the children's version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion at the age of 12. Children version. That Russian literature was in such an interesting sophistication turned into a very children's book that we used to read. And the second book was Henry Ford's International Jew. And before age 15, I read Mein Kampf 3 times. So I was sufficiently poisoned. But God is God of mercy and compassion. God didn't allow me to live with that poison and hate. What saved me primarily was becoming Muslim, becoming religious. Like many people in my generation, growing up early 1980s, also partially as a result of the Iranian Revolution, there was a religious revivalism. More and more people were disillusioned with Turkish nationalism, Arab nationalism, and becoming more and more religious. Islam became a potential and compelling answer to a lot of people of my generation, as every other isms and ideologies have failed, including nationalism and communism and socialism. So when I went to religious schools and institutions to learn Islam in its depth, learn Arabic, learn and understand the mainstream Muslim theology, I couldn't reconcile the hate that I have for Jews and Judaism with the religion that I'm studying. It really troubled me. And since then, I have taken the opposite direction. I'm driving in the opposite direction as far and as fast as I can. And I made a very long progress. Here I am. I spent good years of my teenage years burning Israeli flags in anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist protests in Istanbul and in other parts of Turkey. I'm a senior fellow at an Israeli educational institution, taking more than 150 so far in the last 7-8 years, Muslim American leaders to learn Judaism, Zionism, and Israel from the Jews themselves. Try to see the world through the eyes of the Jewish community, through the sophisticated curriculum and the beautiful educational accumulated wisdom that Shalom Hartman has created. What enabled me ultimately to recover, I still consider myself a recovering anti-Semite, because often if hate is got into your system early on, if you're exposed to any form of racism and hate before the age of 10, 15, that becomes a lifelong struggle. It's like herpes. It never goes away. You have to constantly put some pressure on it, and you have to constantly put yourself into a spiritual discipline and ask forgiveness, do charity, do something about it. Sorry to bring that messy medical term, but it's like that. It's always there to attack you and your community, and you have to constantly put a healthy pressure because it will always come back. And unfortunately, deteriorating Israeli-Palestinian relations and deteriorating conflict situation is constantly creating the very fertile environment for these viruses to come back to us. But what I was able to see, this should be somewhat a summary. I realized my community's collective wisdom is failed in understanding Judaism, Zionism, and Israel, but especially Zionism. As I said in some words, my community's experience of Zionism is a Zionism that was born out of Auschwitz. We only knew and experienced this political Zionism. And for the most part, rightfully so, we said we didn't do it. Why should we pay the price for it? It's a European problem. But my community never got a chance and didn't have many good Jewish teachers to teach them. That's not the only Zionism. It's an important one. But there is also a Zionism was born out of Sinai. There was a biblical Zionism. There was a deep ethnic, racial, scriptural, and spiritual connection to the part of the world. And Zionism today among the modern Jews is, as Hartman so beautifully teaches, is a wide spectrum of experiences. It's not just one thing. So if I expose my Muslim community's young and emerging leaders who are sick and tired of rising anti-Semitism in the Muslim world, sick and tired of constantly Jewish-Muslim relations being sabotaged by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, looking for some answers. They don't want to give up their solidarity of the and brotherhood, their connection to the Palestinian people and their difficulties and suffering that they go through, but they don't want to get into this essential zero-sum game either. I was looking desperately for an opportunity, like who will tell us their story? Who will invest educationally to young and emerging American Muslim leaders? Who will give it a chance? Who will give Zionism a chance? Who will try to understand Zionism as Jews understand themselves? Will try to come onto the other side of the aisle and try to see how these realities are landing in a Jewish screen. And I quite honestly shopped around. I don't know if I told you, Aubrey, I went to AJC, I went to ADL, then they were so welcoming, they were so nice. But I felt, with all due respect to their amazing work, they never quite understood why, at the end, if these people are not planning to be a member or partisan in that particular political issues, what's the point? It was only the Hartman and my personal friendship with Yossi Klein Halevi, which I really hope you will listen and pay attention to. He's a holy man in the Holy Land, really, in every possible sense. In so many ways, he is my Jewish version. He was a Meir Kahana disciple. He was a JDL member. And then he also drove in the opposite direction and did incredible amount of impact and work on me and many other Muslims, changing their hearts and minds. And we started this program at Shalom Hartman Institute, where Muslim Americans devote 13 months of their time. It should really humble people. Sometimes when I see Jewish brothers and sisters sort of having these conclusions about Islam and Muslims, and I say, like, what? How many books did you read about Islam? What education, based on what exposure and education, you sort of, in that certainty, make these truth claims, all pejorative and negative about Islam and Muslims? Here is 150 plus Muslims spending 13 months, and within the 13 months, going to Jerusalem, to Israel twice, and studying extensive Jewish narratives, Jewish understanding, Jewish psychological makeup, etc. But it wasn't easy. It was an easy amount of pushback and vitriolic reactions and the death threats that I have received. I twice have to be taken to a FBI safe house because they felt there was a legitimate threat to my life and my family's life. But despite all this, I cannot be grateful enough. It was a dayenu after dayenu, as we say, that it is I think MLI is in a very small scale proving that if good people invest in a little bit of decency and education, and if they commit to moral courage and consistently show that they are interested in peace and reconciliation, the doors open, the heavens open. And God has blessed this program significantly. There are 2 members of MLI alumni is from the Montreal. I know Rabbi Glazer has been working on it. One of them is your congressman. One of them is in the parliament, Samir Zubairi, who's a proud and public member of the MLI program. I hope at some point when I come for Shabbaton, or I don't have to come all the way to Montreal, you should be able to invite these people and as a 2 fellow Montrealians, if that's the correct word, and see the impact of this education on them. I am not in any simplistic sense a peacenik or a naive person. I don't minimize and trivialize the extent of problems that we are facing as Jews and Muslims today. But I'm also committed to see, if you think Jewish-Muslim relations are so depressing, just pay attention to, in your parents' and grandparents' generation, what the problems were with Jews and Christians. Look at where we were in 1920s and 30s. Just imagine the Holocaust. I mean, many people were alive when it was happening. From gas chambers to now, at least in the West, we came a long way. As depressing as it is, with God's help, we can also make God, Hashem, smile with the kind of reconciliation that took place between Christians and Jews with educational programs like MLI, or with the kind of programs our leader, Rabbi Glazer, is putting together here, inshallah.
Thank you, Imam. I wanted to take a couple minutes just to open up to some of the other folks that have joined as well. If there's any questions that you have or queries based on a lot of the wonderful stories and life experiences that Imam Antepli has shared with us. He also shared with us part of his fascinating story, the biography, which I had shared earlier with the community through the new preface to Yossi Klein Halevi's book, when he speaks about meeting you, entering the garden, which is a wonderful book that speaks about the early parts of the story when you two met, and then also and the recent preface speaks about it again as to why it was such an important encounter. But is there anything that anyone who's on the Zoom room with us now wants to be able to ask?
Is Mr. or Mrs. Feinberg there? I see a beautiful kilim, a beautiful carpet on the wall. What is that? It looks so Turkish.
That's Goldie.
Hey, Goldie. Tell us, what's that beautiful piece of art and what part of the Muslim world it comes from.
Can you
You
hear
have to
me?
unmute yourself.
Can you
You
hear
have to
me?
unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I hooked this rug. It's Persian, Persian designs.
I see. I see.
I just, yeah, I worked on it for a while, hooked it. I just love the decorations, the colors. I thought it was beautiful.
You thought
Can you?
right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hi, this is Yehezkel.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you mentioned, your story is very interesting, firstly, and thank you for sharing. When you mentioned when you were, growing up and you were in Turkey, you said like how Zionist was more brought out, you believed it was brought out from the Holocaust. But you mentioned like just a sentence, and I'm curious what that meant, that you said, okay, why is it our problem, like it's a European issue?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so why do we have to suffer? So what does that mean? Like, why do we have to suffer? Like, what was the suffering in your view of the state of Israel? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
It's not my personal view, but I was giving voice to a very powerful and very prevalent common Muslim pushback towards Israel and Zionism. If you only believe Israel is created because of Holocaust, because of European Jewish problem, they didn't know what to do with the Jews, and thankfully they couldn't kill them all, and they all brought them and dumped them to Israel. The suffering is the inevitable displacement and the human suffering that many Palestinians in the process have to gone through in 1947, 48. Palestinian suffering, in no way, it's not a fiction. It's not only caused by Israel. Even when it's caused by Israel, it is sustained by their own corrupt leaders in Lebanon, in Syria, in other places. But that suffering is real. So as a result of Israel's creation from the beginning, there were hundreds of thousands of Palestinians left. They have to leave their homeland. They became refugees in neighboring countries. They became stateless, and those who left. And then after 1968, as you know, millions of them continue to suffer in the hands of either occupation or also in the hands of their own corrupt, immoral leaders. It doesn't matter who caused it. I'm not into blame game. But that suffering is natural and sometimes inevitable result of the creation of the state of Israel. That's what I was referring to.
Okay, I understand.
And quite honestly, as I say, my community's moral homework to understand and unlearn what they learned about Zionism and try to see and experience Zionism, understand Zionism with no obligation to agree with it, at least try to see it through the eyes of the Jews who experience themselves as Zionists. I think the central moral homework of the Jewish brothers and sisters, which will unlock and activate so much goodness in the Muslim side, is their further improved ability to internalize that Palestinian suffering without losing any pride from their Judaism and Zionism, without losing any joy for Israel's existence or commitment and loyalty for its survival. I think it's possible without losing the pride. I go through this a lot with my own country, Turkey. What my government is doing, or what Turkish government has done to many ethnic and religious minorities. I think there should be a way in which many of our Jewish brothers and sisters can, I hope it comes across respectfully without being paternalistic, can hold that suffering and honor it as a pure human suffering without experiencing it as an existential threat to themselves. It will open many doors in the Muslim communities.
It's one of the questions, actually, Imam, that came up on the chat, which I think is interesting, building on Yehel's insightful question. Susan Abramovitz asked the question, so what can the average Montreal Jew do to be helpful in moving people in the right direction? And I think you made an interesting observation that comes from MLI to see that Muslim American religious leaders are willing to devote 13 months of their life. And also, you didn't tell us this, but I know it's true. They also have received death threats for the work that they're doing by coming to Israel, by studying about Zionism. They're also in danger in terms of the work they're doing. It's not just you. So on the flip side, Susan's asking a good question. We're a Jewish community with a big heart. We obviously have a deep sense of pride and commitment to our love of Zion, and the need to be able to open the heart wider is a huge challenge, as you're putting forth in, I think, a very respectful and honest way. But what is it that we might be able to do to start? The Kotzker Rebbe says you can't make changes overnight. He was a gradualist. He says you have to do, in Yiddish, it's ein kleine drei. What are some of the small little pivots that can begin that Susan's talking about in terms of moving us in that direction to bring more of this the godliness of Jerusalem into wherever it is that we are, in this case in Montreal?
Thank you, Susan. It's an excellent question, and it's a good place to end. Unfortunately, a few minutes after 9, I have to be in my final Zoom call. My whole life became a marathon of Zoom after Zoom. I am just zoomed out.
Ausgezoomed, we say.
What I only say what worked with my community. My community, heart and minds opened. My community is completely disarmed. They develop a lot of respect and appreciation once they put their learning on hold and try to understand Jews, Judaism, Zionism, and Israel through the lenses of people. I repeated this many times. I encourage Montrealians in their own way, in their own capacity, to reciprocate this goodwill, decency, and check themselves. Like, what do I know about Islam and Muslims? And how much of what I know I learned from Muslims themselves? Not Fox TV, not CNN, not Jerusalem Post. How much of that is through the main source, and how much I can relate to their experience? How can I see the world through their eyes? With, again, no obligation to agree with it. As long as, because what happens is, once you try to see the world through the eyes of the other people, it opens up a space. Since I got to know Yossi Klein Halevi, a proud Zionist Jew, an American Jew who made an aliyah, and he became a defender and ambassador of Israel. He fought for Israel. His loyalty and his devotional connection to Israel and the story of Zionism in his own way, he is constantly in my mind when I write, when I think, when I listen to a sermon. Now, many of the tropes of anti-Semitism, which wasn't visible to me, it is visible now. There is a burden of knowing. I know better. So I cannot let these messages of hate and bias and bigotry go unchallenged in my own community. So I encourage all of you to look more in detail to this story of Muslims making the step to learn their Jewish brothers and sisters. Because if any reconciliation between Islam and Judaism will take place, if any peace between the house of Isaac or Ishmael will take place, it's simply not possible in the Middle East these days. Just not possible. I've been going there since 1997. It's very difficult, very complicated, as you know. And it's not very easy in Europe. Look at France, look at England. So if any initial, at least breaking the ice took place, it'll only will happen in North America, which makes American Jews and American Muslims morally more responsible. So if you are part of a community where this kind of partnership, this kind of cleaning the bad blood, bringing the authentic message of Ishmael and Isaac, Abraham and Jerusalem, which is from the very beginning always understood as a place for everybody, not only for one person or one group, it can only happen in North America. That's why that voice calling us from Sinai or from Jerusalem for reconciliation, it should ring morally much more loudly for Jewish Americans and Jewish Canadians and Jewish Muslims and Canadian Muslims and Canadian Jews. I really hope you will respond to this responsibility. There's a beautiful hadith, and I will end with this. It says, when you turn to God, God starts walking towards you. with God's mercy. If you start walking towards God, God starts running towards you. Let's turn to this direction. Enough of bickering, fear, enough of just demonizing the other side and just giving up and taking off ourselves from the moral responsibility. Let's at least turn and see what happens. And if we are a little bit making progress in turning, let's start walking. God will start running towards us. There will be many, many blessings that we can, as Canadian Jews and Muslims there, you can model and exemplify types of Jewish partnerships and relationships and conversations that's not possible anywhere else. Maybe that modeling and exemplification will become a source of inspiration. Maybe it will slow down us as Canadians, as Montrealians, keep importing despair from Middle East to here. Even if we cannot export peace there, but at least we can stop that constantly importing division and polarization in our midst and create different kind of reality over here.
Imam, I wanted to thank you. I'm cognizant that you're jumping from one Zoom call to the next. I want to just make two thank yous. First of all, to thank Marcel, who is here, whose interest and devotion to this work he has made possible for us. So I'm grateful to Marcel for. You can see him. He's under Caroline, but it's actually Marcel with the cap there.
He has a code name. Wow.
He does.
Very Mossadi.
Yeah, he's a very secret guy. But thank you, Marcel, for encouraging this relationship that will continue to grow and to blossom. And the second thing is to you, Imam Antepli. I'll close mirroring your hadith with the words that we have in the back of our empty synagogue here, where the ark is. When we close the ark, we mirror the hadith and we say, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'Nashuva. That is, let us return to you, O God, and then we will return. And the understanding, of course, is very much what you said, that when we make that turn, we just have to turn a tiny bit, just like the eye of a needle. And if we make that shift, God comes running to us and helps us be able to emerge with the messages of love, of peace, of companionship, and most importantly, during Sukkot, of hospitality. So I look forward to being able to welcome you when the time is right into our Sukkot Shalom. And I bless you, your family, your community, and all the work that you're doing. Amen, amen.
As we say next year in Montreal.
Amen, Selah. Thank you, Imam. Thank you, Marcel. And Laila Tov to everybody. Thank you for coming to join us. Have a wonderful evening. Moed Tov.